Rain hammered the cracked pavement like it was trying to wash away the sins of the city. Beneath the flickering yellow glow of a broken streetlight, a teenage boy sat curled up under a damp blanket that had seen better days. His name was Eli Dawson, 17 years old, homeless, and invisible to the world that rushed past him every day. His mother had died 2 years ago after a long battle with illness, and his father, once a decent mechanic, had turned to alcohol and disappeared without a trace. Since then, Eli had been surviving on scraps, odd jobs, and the kindness of strangers, though kindness had become a rare currency in his life. Still, his eyes held a strange, unbroken spark, something that life hadn't managed to extinguish yet. That night, as thunder rolled across the sky and the city seemed to sink deeper into its own chaos, Eli huddled beneath an old bus stop, trying to stay dry. His shoes were torn, his hands rough and cold, but his heart was still beating with a quiet kind of hope. He often told himself that as long as he could still feel the rain, he was alive, and being alive meant there was still a chance, no matter how small. A few streets away, the rumble of a motorcycle cut through the sound of the storm. The engine sputtered, coughed, and then died completely. A tall man in his 40s, with a long black coat and a patch on his back that read, "Hell's Angels MC," kicked the tire in frustration. His name was Ryder Kane, a veteran biker known among his brothers for his wild spirit and iron loyalty. Tonight, however, he was just a man stranded in the rain. He checked his phone, dead. He cursed under his breath and began pushing the heavy bike toward the nearest gas station, each step echoing in the lonely street. When Eli noticed the man struggling, something in his chest stirred. Most people avoided bikers, especially those wearing gang patches, but Eli saw something different. He saw exhaustion, not danger, desperation, not threat. He pulled his blanket tighter around his shoulders, hesitated, and then stepped out into the rain. "Hey, mister," he called, his voice nearly lost in the storm. Ryder turned, his eyes sharp beneath the shadow of his helmet. "You need help?" the boy shouted again. The biker looked him up and down, wet clothes, skinny frame, hollow eyes. "Nah, kid. Go home. This ain't your problem." Eli smiled faintly. "Don't have a home. But I know engines. I can help." Ryder's suspicion softened for a moment. He wasn't used to kindness, especially not from someone who looked like they didn't have enough to feed themselves. "You a mechanic or something?" he asked. Eli shrugged. "Used to watch my dad fix cars before he left. I've been keeping broken things alive ever since." The biker stared at him, then gestured toward the bike. "All right, genius. Be my guest." Eli dropped his blanket, crouched beside the Harley, and examined it with careful eyes. The rain made it harder to see, but he quickly noticed the issue: a blocked fuel line and water in the carburetor. He grabbed an empty soda can from the ground, used its edge to open a screw, and with clever hands began to drain the water. His fingers moved fast, instinctive. Ryder watched, surprised. Within 10 minutes, the boy wiped his hands on his wet jeans, twisted the throttle, and the bike roared back to life with a deep growl that cut through the night. The biker blinked in disbelief. "How the hell did you?" "Just needed to breathe again," Eli said with a grin, patting the engine like it was a living thing. Ryder laughed, a rare sound even to himself. "You're something else, kid." Eli stepped back. "It's all good now. You should get going before the rain floods the roads." Ryder pulled out his wallet instinctively. "Here, take this. You earned it." He offered a few folded bills. But Eli shook his head immediately. "No, sir. I didn't help you for money. Just, felt like the right thing to do." Ryder frowned. "No one said that anymore." "You sure? It's pouring, you look half frozen." Eli just smiled again. "I'll manage. Always do." Ryder hesitated, then tucked the cash back into his jacket, staring at the boy like he was seeing a ghost from another world, a world where kindness still existed. "What's your name, kid?" "Eli." "Well, Eli," Ryder said, starting the engine again, "the world doesn't deserve kids like you." Then he revved the bike, nodded once, and rode off into the storm, leaving the boy standing in the rain, smiling faintly as the red taillight faded into darkness. The next morning, Eli woke up cold and hungry under the same bus stop. He had dreamed of his mother again, her voice telling him to keep his heart clean, no matter how dirty the world became. He rubbed his tired eyes and began his daily routine of searching for cans, bottles, and maybe a piece of bread from the nearby bakery's trash bin. He didn't expect anything to change. He never did. But as the sun began to break through the clouds, the sound of engines rolled across the street. One motorcycle, then 5, then 20. The roar grew louder, deeper, until the entire street trembled. People peeked from windows. Shopkeepers froze. Cars pulled aside. Over 100 motorcycles, each gleaming chrome and thunder, came rolling into the narrow street, Hell's Angels, wearing their leather cuts, their red and white patches flashing in the sunlight. Eli blinked, frozen in place. The riders surrounded him slowly, forming a circle. Then one man, Ryder, stepped off his bike and walked toward him, a wide grin spreading under his beard. "Eli Dawson," he said loudly enough for the street to hear. "You got a minute?" Eli's throat went dry. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked nervously. Ryder shook his head. "Nah, kid. You did something right. And that's rare these days." He snapped his fingers, and two bikers rolled forward with a large black duffel bag. They dropped it in front of Eli. "What's this?" Eli asked. Ryder folded his arms. "You said you didn't want money. So we brought you something else." Eli unzipped the bag and gasped. Inside were food packs, clean clothes, sleeping bags, boots, and even a small folded tent. "You didn't have to," he began, but Ryder interrupted. "We didn't have to, but we wanted to. You fixed my bike without asking for anything, and that kind of heart, well, we don't forget that." Another biker spoke up, his voice gruff but kind. "You helped one of us, kid. That means you helped all of us." Eli's eyes burned with tears he didn't want to shed. No one had ever done something like this for him. Not since his mother. Ryder placed a heavy hand on the boy's shoulder. "You ever need anything, food, shelter, safety, you come find us. You're family now." Eli blinked rapidly, overwhelmed. "Family?" Ryder nodded. "Yeah, brother. You might not wear a patch, but you've got more heart than half the men who do." The rest of the bikers revved their engines in approval, the sound rolling like thunder. People who had once ignored the homeless boy now stood watching, wide-eyed, as the toughest men in the city treated him like royalty. For the first time in years, Eli felt seen. Not as a problem, not as a ghost, but as someone who mattered. Ryder tossed him a small pendant, a metal angel with spread wings. "Keep that. When you look at it, remember that kindness never dies, kid. It just takes the right soul to keep it alive." The bikers rode off, one by one, until the street was filled with the fading echo of their engines. Eli stood there, holding the pendant in his shaking hand, tears mixing with the morning rain. He whispered softly, "Thank you, Mom, guess you were right." For the first time in forever, he smiled without pain. He looked up at the sky, the clouds breaking apart, sunlight pouring down like a promise. Somewhere deep inside, Eli knew that his life was about to change, that maybe, just maybe, helping someone without expecting anything back could still set the world in motion. And as the camera would fade out, Eli's voice would echo softly, "If kindness still means something to you, don't forget to share it. And if this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe, because stories like this remind us that good still lives among us."